Hey, a few weeks ago I talked to you about a product called the Maverick ET 733 from ReadyCheck. Today what I'm going to do is I'm going to demonstrate how I use it, but I'm also going to demonstrate how to smoke a cut of beef. What we got here is we just have an eye of the round. This is commonly referred to as a poor man's prime rib. There are many different cuts of meat you can go with if you want to go for that prime rib flavor, that style of meat, without spending a lot of money on prime rib. What we're going to focus on, one, we're low smoking it. And what I mean by that is we are smoking this thing at below 255 degrees. To prepare the meat, the first thing I did was I did what's called a dry brine. Simply covering it in salt and letting it sit, typically for 48 hours. My grill's getting a little hot. So as you can see here, my monitor is letting me know my grill is above the set temperature. The high temperature I have set for 250. It's a 252 right now. I'm not going to worry about that second degree. So back to the dry brining. You let it sit in salt, preferably 48 hours. 24 hours is okay. 6 hours, acceptable. But you want to get as long as you can. What that dry brining does is you layer the outside of it in salt. The salt brings in moisture from within the cut of beef, pork, poultry, whatever you're cooking. It dissolves the salt, and then the meat absorbs that moisture again, bringing in the salt to the center of the meat. A lot of people, a lot of TV chefs, will have you marinate your meat for 12 hours, 24 hours, and all these different spices and rubs. And that is not necessary. Scientifically speaking, salt is the only molecule that is small enough for meat to actually absorb it. When you're putting all these spices on the outside of the meat, that meat is not absorbing those spices. You're not hurting the meat by doing that, but you're not really doing anything to help it. Here I have a beef rub. It's a recipe I got from a website called AmazingRibs.com. This is my go-to source for all things barbecue. This is Meathead Goldwyn's beef rub recipe. It's a mixture of black pepper, rosemary, oregano, garlic powder, onion powder, paprika, and cayenne powder. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to coat the outside of this meat in my dry rub. One thing you can do, and I should have done it, but I didn't think about it, is you can make a paste with this. You take water, and you dissolve the spices into water, and it kind of makes like a wet rub. It sticks to the meat a little bit better. It can give you a little bit better of a crust. I just didn't think about doing it. And you want to liberally cover the entire piece of meat. Now while I'm doing this, we're going to talk about the cooking process. We're going to cook, like I said, between 225 and 250. The reason we're going low and slow is because the meat is so thick. One way to tell when you have a good, properly cooked cut of meat is after you're done cooking it and you slice it and you look at that color. You want to see two definitive colors. You want to see your brown crust, and on the inside you want to see one solid red color. Now this is, like I said, we're going for that prime rib style of a cook. So I'm going to cook this to 130 degrees. That's a rare temperature. You could take it to 135, 140, but really you're taking away from the meat the higher you go. If you're cooking for a lot of people and you have someone that really does not like medium rare or rare meat, simply get their slice their meat. After it's done, sear their individual cut of meat. But you're really taking away from the flavor of the beef by doing that. Let me get this one side here. So we're going low and slow. The reason for that is because we're going for that even cook. If you cook it too high of a temperature, what ends up happening is you're cooking the outside a lot faster than the inside can absorb that high temperature heat. So what you end up getting is that undesirable dark brown outside of the meat, pink middle, and then you have that weird gray zone in between, almost like a rainbow of colors. You don't want to see that in a properly cooked cut of meat. Like I said, you're looking for two solid colors, a brown crust and then your solid reddish pink inside of the meat. The only way to get that is by cooking low and slow. And actually my grill is too high of a temperature right now, so I'm gonna crack that open. I'm just cooking on a simple Weber kettle grill. This is a offset smoker that I built myself. It's much too large for a cut of meat this small. So it's gonna smoke for a few hours. Let me show you the inside, what I didn't show you. All we have is I have a pocket of hot coals over here, and then coals over here that have not been exposed to heat yet, with some pieces of wood on top. You want to use some hardwood or fruit wood. We're not going for a super heavy smoke flavor with this. The flavor of the beef itself is the main focus of this dish. So over time, this section is going to die out and it's going to transfer heat, and it's going to snake along the bed of coals that I have here. Like I said, I'm cooking between 225 and 250, and it's going to smoke for a few hours. When it's done, I'll come back and show you. Right before, so like I said, 130 is my goal internal temperature. I'm actually going to cook it to about 120, and then I'm going to sear it over the hot coals, and that's going to get me the last 10 degrees, and that's going to get me a nice crust. And since I opened the lid up, the temperature got adjusted, so now my monitor is letting me know I have to tend to the temperature of the grill. We will be back as soon as I'm ready to sear this. Alright, so we've been smoking about 3 hours, and our internal temperature is to 120 degrees. So what we're going to do now is this is what's called a reverse sear. First off, one thing I didn't mention earlier was how I put the temperature probe into the meat. It's real simple. You just want to ensure that these gloves are slippery. You just want to ensure that the tip of your probe is in the most center portion of the meat. We're beeping because I took the probe out, or actually because I took the lid off, so I'm not worried about that. So what I'm gonna do now is I want to get a real good crust on the meat. So we're gonna do a reverse sear. It's called a reverse sear because you'll see a lot of times people will sear meat before they slow cook it. I don't like that process. I just opened the vent on the bottom. I'm going to get a good flame here momentarily. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take each side of the meat and I'm putting it directly over, about 10 minutes per side. This is going to get me those last 10 degrees that I need inside the meat, bringing the meat temperature up to 130 degrees. After I reverse sear it on each side, I will recheck temperature, and then we're done. It's really just that simple. So once it's time to slice open the meat, I'll come back to you and you'll see what the final product looks like. Alright, so the reverse sear is done. Again, what our goal here was just to get a good char, a good bark on the outside of that chunk of meat. We brought the inside of the meat up to 130 degrees. That's rare. Like I said, you can go 135, 140, but with a chunk of meat like this type of meat, you do not want to cook this too high. And now, a lot of people will tell you to let the meat sit. You gotta let it rest. Let the juices redistribute throughout the meat. That's a myth. It's a malarkey. It's nonsense. Does absolutely nothing.
Why did you say nonsense?
Take your meat off the grill. My daughter over here co-starring. Take the meat right off the grill. Go ahead and carve it. No need to let it rest. Now that is what you're looking for. Notice how we're one solid color through the meat. We don't have zones of different color in the meat. We have our bark on the outside and then even color through the meat. A lot of juice in there. That is what you get when you go low and slow. If I were to cook this really fast, we would have had a pink center and then it would have just gotten gray through the outside of that meat.
Yeah, that meat is so gray.
Hope you learned something. Thanks for watching.